The glove, the tears, and the truth. James Hartley was used to winning. He built one of the country's fastest-growing tech companies from scratch, owned 3 luxury cars he barely drove, and lived alone in a penthouse so sleek and modern it was once featured on a design show. He was used to being called Sir, Genius, and Visionary. But not one of those titles meant anything when he opened his eyes to silence each morning. Silence where a little girl's laughter used to echo. That morning was like any other. Sunlight filtered through the sheer blinds, painting golden stripes across his rumpled sheets. James turned his head slowly, eyes squinting at the glow, and reached for his phone, already halfway dreading what he might find, or worse, what he wouldn't. One notification, a calendar reminder. Mia turned 7 in 3 days. His chest tightened. He stared at the screen for a long time, thumb hovering over the notification, unsure whether to clear it or let it torture him another day. He hadn't seen his daughter in over 5 years, not since Celeste left with her, vanishing into another state and another life. At first, the court had ordered limited visitation. Then Celeste's lawyers piled on excuse after excuse. Too disruptive, emotionally confusing. Mia's therapist suggests no contact. It had been a slow suffocation, and James had accepted it, telling himself that giving Celeste space was better than fighting. But nothing about it felt right. He had gifts for every birthday, carefully wrapped and sent on time. But each year they came back unopened, with cold, clinical messages from Celeste's attorneys. Return to sender. Do not contact further. He still kept those boxes, each one a silent grave to a moment that never happened. But something shifted that morning. James found himself staring at a picture on his nightstand. Mia, age 2, laughing so hard her cheeks dimpled as she clung to a stuffed giraffe. His hand moved instinctively to his desk, pulling open the drawer to retrieve a delicate charm bracelet he'd ordered months ago. A small silver star dangled from the chain, engraved with the word Starlight. It had been their word. He used to call her his Starlight when she had trouble sleeping. It always made her smile. Now, he didn't even know if she remembered it. He didn't know what made him do it. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe instinct. But James picked up his phone and typed Celeste Reynolds into a browser. Her social media was still private, but he checked the school page of the district she moved to. And there she was. Mia, his daughter, standing next to Celeste at a school fundraiser. She wore a pale blue dress with white frills, her hair done in perfect curls. Picture perfect. Except it wasn't. James zoomed in. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Her body looked stiff, her hands flat at her sides. And Celeste's hand gripped her shoulder just a little too tightly. A whisper cut through his chest. That's not how she smiles. That's how she hides. James stood up so fast his chair rolled back into the wall. He paced the room, heart pounding, then stormed to his closet. Minutes later, his suitcase was open on the bed. Shirts, pants, the bracelet. A one-way flight to Cincinnati booked within minutes. He didn't know what he'd find. He didn't care what Celeste's lawyers would say. He just needed to see his daughter, to look her in the eyes, to know the truth. The sun dipped low as his rental car crept down a polished, perfect neighborhood, lined with white fences and flower beds. Maple Grove. Everything looked like it belonged in a real estate brochure. Too perfect, too quiet. James parked 4 houses away. His hands trembled as he walked up the path to Celeste's front door. He rang the bell before he could lose his nerve. A woman in her 50s opened the door. Gray uniform, nervous eyes. "Mrs. Reynolds isn't home," she said in a thick Spanish accent. "I know," James replied, swallowing hard. "I'm Mia's father. I need to see her." The woman hesitated. Her eyes studied him, really studied him, and something in his expression must have convinced her. After a long pause, she opened the door wider. "She is cleaning," she said softly. "Please, 10 minutes." The scent of lavender cleaner hit James immediately. The kind Celeste loved. Too sharp, too sterile. Then he saw her. Mia, on her hands and knees. She wore a pink party dress, far too elegant for housework. One hand was covered by a large rubber glove that dwarfed her tiny arm. The other scrubbed the baseboard with trembling, meticulous effort. Her back was hunched, her little face focused, not with play, but with dread. James froze. A lump swelled in his throat. "Mia," he said gently. She flinched. Her shoulders curled upward like she expected punishment. But she didn't look up. She just asked, "Am I in trouble?" That sentence shattered him. "No, sweetheart," James said, kneeling down. "No trouble. I just wanted to see you." She looked over, finally meeting his eyes, and in that instant, he saw all of it. The exhaustion, the tension, the fear of being wrong. "I have to finish," she said quickly, going back to scrubbing. Mom checks with a white glove. James's chest felt like it might explode. He looked to the housekeeper, Maria, who stood frozen in the doorway. He moved a little closer. "Can we sit for a moment? Please. The baseboards can wait." Mia looked unsure. Her hands paused. If I don't finish," she whispered, "I won't get a hug." James stared at her, stunned. "What?" "Mama says I have to earn hugs." The room tilted. He reached out, slowly, gently. "You don't have to earn anything from me, Mia. Ever." After a long silence, Mia peeled off the glove. She folded it carefully and placed it beside the bucket. Then she followed James to the couch, her movements rehearsed, every step like a test. They sat together. She sat rigid, her back straight, hands folded, eyes on the floor. He told her about her birthday, about the bracelet, about the silly giraffe she used to love. Her lips twitched at that. A small, flickering smile. Then, just before Maria whispered that Celeste would be back soon, Maya said something so quiet he almost didn't catch it. "Sometimes I draw you." James blinked. "Draw me." She nodded, pulling a small folded paper from her sock. It was crumpled but neatly colored. A stick figure with a star over its head. "I call you my starlight, Dad. I look at the sky when I miss you." James closed his eyes. His hands trembled as he held the drawing. When he finally stood to leave, he bent down. "Can I have a hug?" Mia nodded. She hugged him like someone who didn't know how. Stiff, calculated, like she was afraid of doing it wrong. But James held her like he'd never let go. Back in the car, he wept for the first time in years. The attic of forgotten gifts. James Hartley didn't sleep that night. Not really. He lay in a hotel room that smelled like bleach and stale carpet, staring at the ceiling, clutching a drawing that had already changed his life. A child's stick figure labeled Starlight Dad under a hand-drawn sky of stars. His daughter's voice still echoed in his head. "I have to earn hugs." James wasn't sure how long he sat at the desk after that, but when the sun rose outside, the hotel notepad was filled, scribbled edge to edge with everything Mia had said, every tiny detail she'd revealed. He'd written it all down. The glove, the chores, the fear, the way she flinched. Her eyes. God, her eyes. Those weren't the eyes of a 7-year-old girl. They were the eyes of someone trying not to exist. By mid-morning, James was no longer questioning himself. He had made a mistake years ago, choosing the easier path of retreat instead of confrontation. But that part of him was gone now. Maya didn't need a visitor. She needed a rescuer. James tapped through his contacts until he found a number he hadn't dialed in years. Marcus Chen. A quiet, methodical private investigator who had once uncovered embezzlement inside James's own company. "Marcus," James said when the man picked up, his voice grave, "I need your help. It's about my daughter." By noon, Marcus was on the case. School records, social media, housekeeper details, everything. Within hours, the texts began to arrive: images, documents, and notes. The first picture nearly made James drop his phone. A dusty attic, lit only by a beam of afternoon sunlight through a tiny window. And in the corner, boxes, lots of them, carefully stacked, labeled by year. Marcus's caption read, "Surveillance photo, top window, taken last week." James zoomed in on one of the boxes. The writing on it was unmistakable, his own handwriting. Mia, 5th birthday. His chest tightened. Inside that box was the pink bicycle he'd had custom-made, still in bubble wrap. Another box had a card taped on top, unopened. The handwriting read, "To my little star, Daddy loves you forever." But someone had written over the envelope, delicate cursive, familiar, cold, "Return to sender." Later that evening, a second message arrived from Marcus. Housekeeper's name is Sofia. Spanish, late 40s, been with Celeste for 6 years, works weekdays, may be willing to talk. Be cautious. James gripped the phone tighter. He had a plan forming, but he needed confirmation, proof that couldn't be explained away in court. He needed to know if this was neglect or something darker. He contacted Dr. Sarah Bennett, a child psychologist his lawyer had once recommended during the divorce. He'd ignored her advice back then. Now he was begging for it. After James described the scene at Celeste's house, Maya scrubbing baseboards in a party dress, flinching at every gentle word, Dr. Bennett was silent for a long time. Then she said quietly, "Mr. Hartley, what you're describing isn't just neglect. It's emotional abuse, coercive control. That child's brain is in survival mode." James leaned over, fingers laced into his hair. "What do I do?" "Document everything. Get witness testimony, photos, audio, if possible. And if there's a way to safely observe her in school, go." James didn't hesitate. The schoolyard surveillance. The next morning, James was leaning against a chain-link fence outside Maya's elementary school. He'd signed in at the front office under a fake name, saying he was a prospective parent moving to the area. His eyes scanned the playground until he saw her. Mia sat alone on a wooden bench while other kids played tag and kicked soccer balls. In her lap was a sketchpad. She was drawing again. But she kept glancing around, never laughing, never moving. A teacher approached her and crouched down to speak. Maya's shoulders tensed instantly. She clutched her notebook closer to her chest. Then she stood up and walked away, toward the fence, toward the furthest corner of the field, away from everyone. James felt a fresh wave of helplessness. The schoolyard was full of bright colors and noise, but Mia had found the only pocket of silence and buried herself in it. That afternoon, James was back in his hotel, pacing the room. He couldn't wait for more slow photos. He needed someone inside. He remembered the housekeeper's name, Sofia. And so, he took a gamble. He messaged Marcus. "Try to reach Sofia. Tell her I want to help Mia. She doesn't have to do anything illegal. Just tell me the truth." An hour later, James received a reply. A location. A time. A quiet gas station off the freeway. The pink recorder. Sofia arrived with shaking hands and a pained look in her eyes. She didn't waste time. From her large canvas bag, she pulled out something James hadn't expected. A pink plastic recorder. A toy, decorated with fading cartoon butterflies. "She thinks I don't know it works," Sofia whispered, "but she hides it under her bed. I heard it once. It records things." James stared at the small toy. His throat dried. "You've listened to it." Sofia nodded slowly. "Only pieces, but it's bad. Sometimes. She cries into it when she thinks no one hears." Then she reached back into her bag. A USB stick. "I copied a few files," she said, voice trembling. "I couldn't let this go on." James took it, hands shaking. "I'll protect her," he promised. Back at the hotel, James plugged in the drive. The first recording began with static. Then a slam. Celeste's voice. Cold. Sharp. Nothing like the public version she showed at school functions. "You call this clean? Look at your hands. Filthy. Lazy. Just like your father." Mia's voice followed. Quiet. Frightened. "I used soap. Don't talk back." The next part was worse. Another recording. "No stories tonight. No hugs. Not until you stop acting like a baby. Grown-up girls don't cry about cleaning." James couldn't breathe. He pressed pause. Then rewind. Then play again. He needed this documented. Every word. As he reached for his phone, intending to send the files to his lawyer, his eyes caught something else. The drawing. The one Mia gave him. The stick figure with the star over its head. "I call you my starlight, Dad. I look at the sky when I miss you." James stood up, the recorder still playing static behind him. His fists clenched. Enough. The plan begins. Within 24 hours, his lawyer had the recordings. Dr. Bennett had received her full summary. Marcus was putting together a dossier. James even visited Mia's school again. This time, he zoomed in on one of her sketchpad pages during recess. It showed a house, cut in half. One side dark, the other filled with stars. In the center, a small girl sat on the roof, holding a teddy bear. She'd labeled the drawing, "Me, when I pretend I'm okay." James returned to his hotel that night with a new purpose. He wasn't just a father anymore. He was a witness, a protector, a man who had come back too late, but wasn't leaving again. He played one last audio file before bed. This time, Mia's voice whispered alone into the recorder. "Today, I drew the stars again. I hope my dad is watching me from the sky. Maybe if I'm really good, he'll come back." James whispered back to the darkness. "You don't have to be good. You just have to be you. I'm already coming." A fight for starlight. James stood in the quiet of his rented living room, staring at the framed photo he'd brought with him. A picture of Mia as a baby, bundled in a yellow blanket, eyes barely open, hand wrapped around his pinky finger. That was the last time he felt sure he was doing something right. Until now. The last 72 hours had changed everything. He'd held the pink recorder in shaking hands, heard Celeste's cruelty in raw audio, collected secret photos of unopened birthday gifts, watched his daughter draw herself as a shadow beneath stars, hiding in a world where hugs were conditional and praise was currency. But now, he had something even stronger than evidence. He had a plan, and for the first time in years, he had a chance. The bravery weekend. James didn't tell Mia everything. He didn't want to overwhelm her. But the court had finally agreed to a supervised weekend. A neutral, court-appointed observer named Miss Thompson would accompany Mia to James's rental house. James spent the entire day before her visit making everything perfect. He made sure every drawer in her room was filled, not with clothes, but with comfort. Stuffed animals, blankets, sketchbooks, a constellation lamp that glowed on the ceiling when the lights turned off. And in the center of the room, on the bed, sat a freshly cleaned and familiar face. Buddy the bear. He didn't know if Mia would remember it, but he hoped it would help her remember him. The knock came just after 3:00 p.m. James opened the door to find Miss Thompson holding a clipboard. And beside her, clutching a small duffel bag and a larger stuffed bear, stood Mia. Her eyes scanned the room like a soldier entering unfamiliar territory. James knelt slowly. "Hi, sweetheart," he said softly. "Welcome home." Mia didn't respond at first. Her fingers clutched the strap of her bag tight enough to turn her knuckles white. James stayed where he was. No sudden movements. No expectations. Just warmth. Patience. "Would you like to see your room?" he asked. Mia gave the tiniest nod. She followed him down the hallway, steps silent. When she saw the lamp, the stars painted across the ceiling, and Buddy resting on the pillow. Something shifted in her face. Recognition. Surprise. A crack in the mask. "He's still here," she whispered, touching the bear. "He never left," James said. They didn't force a schedule. James let Mia lead. They started with puzzles. Mia was meticulous, but her hands shook when she reached for the pieces. She kept glancing at the clock. James didn't push. He praised her gently for every mash, told jokes, made goofy voices for the puzzle characters. And slowly, she laughed. That night, James suggested building a blanket fort. He pulled out pillows and sheets. Mia stood back at first, watching. Then, carefully, she joined in, holding a corner, adjusting a pillow. Inside, they drank cocoa with marshmallows. James used his phone to project constellations on the ceiling. He pointed out Orion, Ursa Major, and their favorite. "That one's Starlight, Dad." Mia leaned against his arm. It was the closest she'd let herself get to him. The star chart. The next morning, Mia padded into the kitchen in her constellation pajamas, looking hesitant. James smiled. "Pancakes? Star-shaped." She nodded. As they cooked together, her tiny hand helping scoop batter onto the griddle, she spoke without looking up. "What happens if I mess one up?" James flipped a lopsided pancake and made it talk in a silly voice. "I'm still a star, just a funny-shaped one." Mia giggled, and for the first time, didn't flinch at the sound. Later, James introduced her to something new, a bravery chart. Instead of tasks and punishments, it had boxes for moments of growth. The first one. Tried something new. Mia picked a shiny gold star sticker and placed it proudly in the box. They added more over the weekend. Told the truth. Tried again. Laughed loudly. Asked a question. Each one came with a real moment. A victory. A healing. The call that changed everything. Monday morning came too quickly. James was packing Mia's snacks when his phone buzzed. The school's number. He answered, heart racing. "Mr. Hartley, Celeste is here. She's attempting to pick up Mia." Unannounced. "She says it's her weekend. We're keeping Mia in the classroom." James's blood went cold. "I'll be there in 10 minutes, he said, already grabbing his keys. At the school, he found Mia sitting in a small reading room with a teacher. She looked scared, but calm. When James walked in, her face changed, a flicker of relief. He knelt beside her. "You okay?" She nodded. "She didn't get to me," she whispered. James hugged her gently. "You're safe now." The courtroom showdown. 2 days later, James stood outside the courthouse. His tie was too tight. His hands were sweaty, but his voice was strong. Sarah, his lawyer, stood beside him. "Are you ready?" James nodded. "For Mia? I'd walk through fire." The courtroom was quiet. Celeste sat on the other side, perfectly dressed, her face calm. But her fingers gripped her chair tightly. Celeste's lawyer went first. He painted her as the dutiful mother, claimed James's reappearance had caused emotional instability in Mia, that she had a structured, loving home. But then it was Sarah's turn. She played the recordings, Celeste's voice berating Mia, threatening her, comparing her to broken things. Gasps filled the courtroom. She showed photos of unopened gifts hidden in the attic. Then, the bravery chart. She showed Mia's drawings. The 2 houses, the figure hiding under stars, the starlight dad. Finally, she made her request. "Your Honor, we ask that Mia not be forced to testify." She's spoken in the only way she could, through her art, her chart, and her behavior. Judge Martinez took a long breath. "This court sees enough cases to know the difference between appearances and truth," she said firmly. Then she turned to James. "You didn't return to stir chaos. You returned to save your child. And this court thanks you for it." Her gavel hit the wood. Full custody is granted to James Hartley, effective immediately. Coming home. Maya stepped into her new home later that evening. No clipboard, no supervision, just her and her dad and freedom. James knelt in front of her, eyes full of emotion. I love you exactly as you are. No more stars to burn. You already shine. Mia wrapped her arms around his neck and whispered, I know. That night, they lay in the fort again, looking up at the stars on the ceiling. James pointed to one. That one. That's the Mia star. She smiled sleepily. It's the brightest. James kissed her forehead. Just like you.